I am just going to ask you a series of guiding questions. Feel free to answer or not answer anything that you like. If you need to stop the recording at any time, just let me know. So the first question, how has COVID-19 affected you, your family, or your community? Loaded question, I know.
I don't know if you have enough time for this to answer. It's been life-changing for sure. The entire community, everybody that I know. For me, over the past 2 years, since the onset in March 2020, I've lost 25 people, family members, friends, to COVID. I started here at Newark Emergency Services September 2019. COVID hit March 2020. So it was, a panic, because we started seeing numbers that we hadn't seen before. We weren't in a financial position really to handle what was going on, struggling nonprofit. So for the organization, I had to go into almost attack mode to try to get money and resources, reached out to my support system, personal and professional, and they came through and, just really trying to support my team, because while I was losing people, they were losing people too. People were getting sick, people were dying, but they still came to work, they still had to serve. And so when you are trying to help people get over the toughest time of their life, while you're going through the toughest time of your life, there's something that you lose, there's something that you have to give up that you don't necessarily get back. And in all of these grants and different things, there's no line item for self-care, there's no line item for therapy, there's no line item for counseling. And so we just try to find ways to support, a team and keep them motivated and keep them uplifted while they are doing all the things. But for me personally, it was really hard. Like, it was really the hardest time of my life. I went home and cried. It was tough. It's still tough, but we made it through on the other side. So, we keep going. But I mean, financially, it was terrible. And we were one of the only organizations that remained open, and everybody told us to close. But you can't, the services that we provide, the food, the clothing, the shelter, the showers, the support, you can't do that virtually, And so I didn't understand how organizations like ours justify being closed. And we would come to work every day and literally it was a ghost town. Nobody was open. We were open, the supermarket and the liquor store. What I'm saying? And it was very, 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 very difficult. It was a very, very dark time. It was very difficult. And it's going to take a lot for us to come out of that. Food insecurities overcame housing insecurities. And so we're doing rental assistance, but we're doing tons and tons. I mean, 5 tons of food a month. Tons, tons, not pounds, tons of food. So it was a really, really, really difficult time. So we're still trying to regain some footing from that.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you just, reflecting back to the beginning, and that statement, attack mode, just really, really resonates, I think, and continuing to just be there and provide support. So thank you so much for just kind of providing that background too. But I'm going to switch gears now and ask some questions related to the vaccine for COVID-19, and just would love some of your insights about that. So have you been vaccinated for COVID-19 or plan to be?
I'm vaxxed and boosted, but I'm going to be honest, I was not originally one of those like, oh, I'm ready. It took a long time for me to get there. So being an African-American woman and also a Muslim, that was a lot. And there was a lot of very heavy, serious discussions about vaccines and about just trust and the history of what has happened in the African American community regarding healthcare, the disparities, just the mistrust, the abuses. And everybody was so scared in the beginning. And we didn't know what to believe. We didn't know who to trust. But doing this work and being a part of a front-facing organization, and we actually received a grant from United Way for vaccines. And so, it was the Equitable Vaccine Initiative. And so I had to really sit down and listen and do some research and realize that, you got to kind of move on, look at the data and pay attention to the science, and also move on faith. And so there are a lot of people in the Muslim community that are still very adverse to it. But those of us who have, made Hajj and made our pilgrimage to Mecca years ago, we had to take vaccine. We had to be vaccinated for different things, for hepatitis and meningitis and different things like that. And so there's a whole list of things. And so and a lot of it is fear, and so I pushed past my fear and was vaccinated. I did not mandate for my staff to be vaccinated, but I believe 99% of them are. And I even got COVID, but it was a very strong flu. It wasn't, I know people got COVID. It was, I never went to the hospital, never ventilator. I know people had died. I lost the love of my life, died. So I've seen both sides and the horrors of it, and started having conversations with different people about the vaccine. And it just made sense for me at that time to do that, especially with the work that I was doing. So that I was thankful enough that when I did get COVID, and it took a long time, but when I did get it, I didn't have to be hospitalized. I could be home and take care of myself and get well. And, to my knowledge, no long-term effects physically, medically. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so sorry for your loss and the losses that you've experienced over this. And so important too to talk about that trust piece and, that original view that you said kind of changed from how you originally perceived it. Can you share a little bit more about some of those personal reasons that you had for receiving the vaccine and how your view might have changed since initially when it was first, made available?
Yeah, it when it first came out, I like a lot of people, we've had this conversation in my family and in my friend circle, oh, that was really quick. Oh, they came out with this so quick, and we have all of these other diseases that there's no vaccine for. People are still dying of cancer. They still having all of these things. And so it was something that just kind of, then it was just, I've had family members who were part of, Tuskegee experiment, back in the 40s, where, Black men were, injected with syphilis and allowed it to permeate through their system and eventually kill them, just to see if there's a difference in treatment in Black men versus white men. And other people who have, family members who, almost died because they weren't taken seriously as far as medical treatment, seeing firsthand the disparity of healthcare systems in Black communities versus, communities that have very limited residents of color. And so the trust in the government itself and in the medical profession is very, very, very low. And we just, it was a lot of fear that we take this vaccine and we're going to be allowed to die. And I'm going to be honest, that's what it was. It's like, we're going to be allowed to die, Black people. And the thing is that because also people don't understand about the economics of COVID. So if you are living in a suburban household, and if someone gets COVID, guess what? They have a place where they can quarantine and isolate away from the family. But if you're in an urban community living in a small 2-bedroom apartment, guess what? You get COVID, the whole house got COVID because you can't get away from each other. You know, they were telling people you can't go out, you know, there was no work, no school or whatever, but people could stay on their porch or go in the backyard. Guess what? We didn't have backyards. We didn't have front porches. We didn't have that space. So you're confined in these spaces and everybody's getting sick. And the numbers skyrocketed in Black and Brown communities because we live on top of each other. You know, and so the economics of that, so in communities that are low income, you know, that are poor and disadvantaged, and you know, it was just, I mean, it was a pandemic for us before it was a pandemic for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it was a horrible, horrible, horrible time and experience. And so that was the fear that we were going to be left for dead, vaccine or no vaccine.
Absolutely. And what was that experience like for you personally? You know, making the appointment for the vaccine, going through it. You know, how did that go?
So what made me finally do it is actually I was, you know, taking a walk. So me and my best friend, we decided we're gonna start walking in the morning. So it's like, you know, I'm working so much, you know, I gotta get out, clear ahead. And so 5 o'clock in the morning, we would do this walk around the neighborhood. And I was walking and I just felt this tightening in my chest, like I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought I was having a heart attack. And I was just like, oh God, I'm literally working myself to death. I thought I was having a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
And went to the emergency room. So they checked it out, wasn't having a heart attack, just stress, needed to rest. And so they asked me, you know, what I did. And I told them, you know, director and kind of work that I do, organization. And they asked me about the vaccine. And I said, no. And so they said, well, you know how you felt when you felt that you were having a heart attack and you felt that you couldn't breathe? You know, multiply that by 10. If God forbid you get COVID and you can't breathe and you know, and the pain and the struggle for breath and everything like that. And so I thought about it and I said, okay, come on, give it to me. So,
Okay.
and so that's when I got, I was vaccinated at the hospital. And then we had a vaccine event at the organization. And that's when I got my booster.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wanted to, because I still had people that were reluctant. And I also realized that for the residents as well as my staff, you know, I had to lead by example. I can't be touting this vaccine initiative and I refuse to be vaccinated. So I got boosted, and then we had other residents and staff, they got it, and volunteers and our interns. So they did it too.
Okay. Yeah. And I was going to ask you just kind of a follow-up, you know, about COVID vaccines being available. And I know that that's something that you provide. Can you talk a little bit about what the general availability is that you see in the community, and what are some of those barriers or challenges, if any, that still exist?
So in the beginning, let me tell you, it was actually so funny that you asked me that question, because again, this is another thing we like, see, they're trying to kill us. So what was happening is that it was offered, you know, the vaccines were available all over Newark, but Newarkers couldn't get them because the people that work here and then leave, they were all flooding in, and then they were having people come in. So because there was no residency, so Newarkers couldn't get in to get vaccinated. That's why they started these different initiatives with community-based organizations like ours, because they were, you know, having vaccines at the hospitals, at the City MD, and you know, at Rutgers, at NJIT, and lines around the corner, and no one from the city was in there, couldn't get in. That's when they were making appointments. You had to go online, and it was just a mess. And so, you know, people were outraged, and it really turned into a really big thing here in the city. And then that's when they started, you know, having spaces just for Newark residents to be able to come. But it took a long time for that to happen. It was really, really a bad situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And Can you speak, do you know like what was kind of that, that switch where they started making the vaccine more available to residents, actual residents of Newark? If there was anything that kind of drove that, or anything that kind of made it easier to access?
Yeah, what drove it was the residents. The residents started screaming. Residents and community-based organizations like ours, like we rallied together, and we started hitting up our legislators and our local elected officials, the mayors, the county executive, all of those people, and it was really really ridiculous because they really didn't know what was happening. And I'm telling you, if you went to NJIT and, they would, be vaccinating hundreds of people, not one Newark resident. And so, so they started coming together and creating spaces just for residents.
There's a lot of that self-advocacy, kind of just really boots on the ground, having to speak up and give that voice. Sure.
Yeah, and that was happening with everything with COVID. It wasn't automatic. It wasn't an automatic response for the residents. Like, we had to advocate for ourselves, and we had to really speak up and make sure that they understood everything that was happening with us. And there was specific, specific needs and specific issues that we had to deal with that other people didn't.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I want to kind of talk a little bit about the communications and information aspect too of the COVID-19 vaccine. And to start, where did you go personally for information about the COVID vaccine, and what sources did you find that you trusted the most?
I started going online, CDC website. Those of us in the tri-state area, we kind of lived by the daily COVID updates and the briefings and everything. Cuomo, God bless him with all his stuff, but his daily noon briefings were must-see TV, and it was really really good. The one thing, and I would say Mayor Baraka did a really really good job of putting information out there. The only thing that I will say is that a lot of things were shared via Facebook and social media. And everybody's not on social media. So someone like my mom, who, if she's a MSNBC, CNN junkie, but if she doesn't see anybody that looks like her telling her that it's okay, she's not going to do it. And she still hasn't. And so that was the problem. So the people that looked like me were on social media. So it was hard, having those conversations with other family members and everything. And remember, we weren't getting together for the Thanksgiving and all of those things. So you're talking to people on the phone. These are people that they're just learning how to hook up the computer and then do the Zoom and everything like that. So if they're not seeing anyone that looks like them, if they're not hearing something that's familiar to them, they're not going to trust it. And so my mother and her whole group, none of them are vaccinated because they didn't trust it, and nobody that looked like them explained it to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it kind of leads right into our next question too, about how can we improve, how can state and local health departments, organizations improve communications and messages about the vaccine? I think you touched on a really important, kind of piece of that already. Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think part of it would started the numbers of people getting vaccinated in our community started going up when they came into the neighborhoods, when they started, enlisting the help of community-based organizations. So they started having vaccines set up at ShotRite, and, local places and different things like that. So you have to go where the people are, you have to speak their language. We have a very diverse community here. We have people, that speak Spanish and French Creole and Portuguese. And so you have to explain things to people in a manner that they understand it. And so once they took the time to do that, that's when they started getting the numbers, but it seems like everybody's going away from that. It seems like people are just like, it's okay. My nephews are like my twin nephews, they're grown now, but they live with me. And one is home now with COVID. He's vaccine boosted, in his first time, and I'm glad he's not, to the point where he has to be hospitalized.
Yeah.
But COVID is still out here. And so people act as if it's a thing in the past. So you still have to go where people are and provide them the information and send people into the community that represent the community. Um, you know, you know, Julia's a nice lady and everything. I wouldn't send you into my community because people like to look at you like, I don't know. As nice and sweet as you are, you got to send people in that will be able to relate to the issues that's going on. The people, that looks and sounds and have the same similar experiences as the people that you're trying to connect to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing. So I know we're coming up on our time here. And I wanted to ask, I think you've talked about this already, about increasing that confidence. What would you like to see when it comes to our state and local organizations, contributing again, so that we can boost that confidence in the vaccine?
I would like to see some meetings in the community. I would like to see some gatherings in the community. Like you guys had the conference is great. This was our second year going. We loved it. It was a lot of good information. But there are more people that need to hear some of the things that go on, and we do our best to try to bring it back. But to have some meetings in the community, to work with community-based organizations, to do a quarterly gathering or something like that, to provide information, have a speaker, to do some things like that. I think that would help a lot. One, it shows to people that you really care about them. Two, that you're really serious about the information and connecting with them. And I think, and then also it shows a good partnership and a collaboration with the local agency, so they know that there's an investment there.
Thank you so much for all your time on today's interview and just incredible insights. But before we end, I want to ask, is there anything else that you'd like to share that we haven't already kind of covered, or any questions I didn't ask?
No, I think that one thing that I've learned from the conference, and just getting to know, Jackie and everything, I really, really appreciate the intentionality about what you all do with the YMCA and the Alliance, and not even just with the culture of health and the conference, but your connection to the community and making things make sense for everyone, the inclusion of it all. Is very, very, very important. And I know everybody's going to, diversity, equity, inclusion, these buzzwords, but you live it, and it shows in what you do, that it's not just, you're just doing it because it's trending right now. And that means a lot for longevity and sustainability. And so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much, and really appreciate, again, all your time today and for sharing your story with me.